Welcome. My name is Mother Caitlin Keith. I'm one of the board members for Episcopal Parish Network, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome you all this afternoon to this workshop. Please put in the chat where you're dialing in from so that our panelists can see the breadth of all of the places you're coming from across the church. Additionally, in the chat, you can post questions and comments while they're speaking, and our panelists will get to them at the end as they are able, but do that with the chat feature. We have several more workshops coming up for Episcopal Parish Network soon. Check the EPN website for what's coming up next, and as always, our workshops are free for the whole church. Thank you all again so much for joining us, and I'm going to turn this over to Bob Burney.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Bob Burney, the CEO of Picture House, the distributor of Leap of Faith, that and we're so proud of it. Just to give you a brief description, the film shows 12 diverse Christian leaders finding hope and fellowship at a series of boundary-breaking retreats in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Brought together by Reverend Michael Galter, who you can see there, of the Colossian Forum. 5 women, 7 men struggle with some of today's most contentious issues. The divisions between them test both their common belief in the universal importance of love and kindness and the bonds they build over the course of a year. Inspiring and provocative, Leap of Faith explores whether we can disagree and still belong to each other in a divided world. My partner, Jeannie Burney, and I at Picture House were really intrigued by the idea of the film when we first met Nicholas back at Sundance, I think it was this year, and he told us about the process of making the film. Of course, working with the filmmakers of Won't You Be My Neighbor was a super honor, and we were very excited. But the idea of helping people understand the ways of talking to each other during this particularly difficult time was compelling to both of us and our team. So we've all faced this in family and work situations, and perhaps people are looking for direction or perhaps don't even know how to start discussing these things. And the film can be an inspiring guide and example. And just to give you a bit of a look at the film, let's show you the trailer we've put together, and then we'll talk a little more after it. So Andy, if you
The problems are so big right now that we felt like we needed to do something. So we brought 12 pastors together from different theological, racial, ethnic, and political persuasions to see if they could find reconciliation in the middle of these polarized times.
We are being taught to hate each other.
The whole plethora of issues:
gun control,
immigration,
race, gender,
class,
abortion,
racism.
I would officiate a same-sex marriage.
There are times that the Spirit has to disrupt our patterns of living.
why can't we be who we are and that be okay to the next person? Why aren't we trying to make everybody believe and feel the same way?
Seeing the responses to that was a lot more painful than I expected.
I think people love and respect you more when you let them know you're human.
The fact that we disagree is not insurmountable.
You be who you are, I'll be who I am, and we'll find a way through together.
Amen. Preach, preacher.
I was holding this thing together out of a fear of the institution failing, not for love of my children.
I think being in a relationship with these 11 people has changed me.
What would it mean if all of the polarization, fragmentation, and conflict were actually this amazing opportunity for the gospel?
It's a story about love. Can people actually love each other beyond tolerance?
That's a holy thing.
like to start this by introducing the director of the film, Nicholas Ma. He's an award-winning director, writer, and producer based in Brooklyn. He produced, as I said earlier, Won't You Be My Neighbor, about the life of Fred Rogers, which was also at the Sundance Film Festival. And most recently, the WNBA documentary Unfinished Business, which was at Tribeca Film Festival, directed a feature, Mabel, in the San Francisco Film Festival, and which he co-wrote with Joey Goodwin and was awarded the Sloan Prize. He is, prior to film, he covered global economic policy on the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, and after working as a consultant in New York and Shanghai. Amazing filmmaker and wonderful human. And also Reverend Michael Gulker, president of the Colossian Forum, a passionate leader, deeply invested in the polarized intersection of faith and culture, and exploring how both can thrive when grounded in love of God and love of neighbor. He's served as the president of Colossian Forum since 2011, and he's helped transform contentious conflicts into opportunities for deeper discipleship and a more beautiful witness. Under his leadership, the Colossian Forum has equipped hundreds of church nonprofit organizational leaders and thousands of individuals to discover transformative practices. He's also really a part of this film and a subject in the film. So I wanted you both to maybe start with the origin of the film and how you met and how this film was developed.
I mean, it's a really sort of kooky story, frankly, the fact that Michael and I are in each other's lives. And it's one of those things about kooky stories, you can't imagine them going any other way in hindsight, but you realize just how unlikely it all was.
Yep.
You know, Morgan and I had made this movie about Mr. Rogers, and everyone loved the feeling in the movie, sort of saying, "Oh gosh, what a wonderful world that was." And then the question of like, where are the Mr. Rogers of today would sort of inevitably get asked, and everyone would sort of shuffle their feet and sort of say, "Well, I guess that's why we can't have nice things." But it sort of created this interest that we had in, what are faith leaders doing today? And Mr. Rogers was a Presbyterian minister. What's going on in that space? Is there another way? Is there something else? And when I read about Michael's work in the Wall Street Journal, we thought, what if we just got in contact and started talking and just started asking questions? And I don't think we expected Michael to ask so many questions in reply, but it began the beginning of a year-long conversation that sort of set the stage for this movie. And as we've watched sort of Christianity start to fracture and continue to fracture in so many ways, and our country continue to fracture in so many ways, what Michael was trying to do felt different. It felt like trying to live together with difference versus trying to eliminate it. And I wondered whether perhaps when his big idea came of doing this across Christianity, maybe there would be a lesson for all of us, regardless of whether we come from a specific denominational tradition or whether we come from a different tradition altogether.
Yeah, we never imagined our work being seen. I mean, even the Wall Street Journal was an odd thing. It's weird to say that your work is in a Wall Street Journal when you're a small nonprofit working with churches. Like, that's just a category error, right? And the Wall Street Journal was interested in, because of all of the polarization, they ended up telling a story they didn't expect to tell about a small church that was living quite beautifully across deep difference. And that caught us by surprise. And it was a very, very popular article. And then when Nicholas, came calling with Morgan, saying we'd like to do something, on film to try to capture this, it really struck a note with me, because we know that in order for people to take on this work of reconciliation and conflict transformation, the first thing they have to encounter is some story, some vision that makes them think something better might be possible. And we know from our work what's possible, because it's always rich and beautiful. But the idea of capturing it on film was really a thrilling idea, and also terrifying, because I didn't have any idea if it would work.
It's so funny, Michael. I feel like that's the thing that really, both of us had these sort of high-minded expectations of what this project could be and all of that. And then, every month it was like being buffeted by a storm. It's like, okay, well, we better tack here and move here. And you sort of think to yourself, gosh, have we completely lost the plot? Is there going to be a story here at all? I mean, is all of this discord, does this lead to anything? What is this? And then somehow now, when I feel like you and I have talked about it and looking back at the movie, it is those things that we hoped for in so many ways, but in a way that is uniquely its own, in a way that we didn't anticipate, and in a way that feels more powerful and more beautiful than we could have expected. And I guess in some ways that's maybe that's the spiritual schooling that I've received from the film, right? That sort of willingness to hold something loosely, to accept the notion of the possible, even where it's invisible. And I just feel so grateful for your patience with me in this process too, because it swamped both of us, our lives in different ways. And I wouldn't want it any other way, but I might not have chosen it if I had known.
Well, and the Colossian Forum gets its name from Colossians 1:17, all things hold together in Christ. And that actually became the question of the film. Could we bring 12 pastors from very diverse backgrounds together? Would they hold together? So they have this scriptural conviction or confession, and would that actually hold? And the adventure of the film was just exploring that with as much integrity and authenticity as we could, and without certainty all the way through.
It's a real high wire act. And people probably don't understand how long this takes. How long was the actual process of filming the film?
Yeah, no. So Michael and I first spoke in December of 2020, and it took probably a year of talking to each other to trust each other enough to say, maybe there is a project we could work on together. And then starting from the winter of 2021, we went into pre-production, started shooting in 2022, and finished shooting, 2023, but then we're editing for over a year and, finishing up some last little pieces here and there. And so it's really been a 4-year journey, in a way. And gosh, I felt so grateful that when the film came together when it did, because it allows us to open this film across the country in a time where it feels like it's the right story, right? We're being told nonstop about how divided we are, and we're not being given a lot of tools to sort of to imagine a different future, right? And I think sometimes our imaginations are impoverished by the stories that we're surrounded by that make things seem so impossible. And my hope is that the story of these extraordinary pastors offers some ballast for the other side, some ballast to say, I'm going to hang in there a little bit longer, and I'm going to commit to belonging to you, and you're belonging to me long after this division, that threatens us, crests. I don't know, Mike.
I wanted to ask how you picked the pastors and how you came up with who would be involved in the film.
Yeah, that was a process too. I mean, when Nicholas first approached, we were trying to figure out how, the Wall Street Journal was just on one church. How could we do something broader? And so we kicked around ideas of bringing people from all over the country. And the more we thought about that, we kind of seen, well, that's been done. And if you're not sort of invested in a local community, the disagreements are more abstractions than they are what's happening in your neighborhood, and it just kind of can turn into a group hug and everybody goes back their way. Then we thought maybe we would do it in Chicago, as a recognizable city, because who's heard of Grand Rapids? I mean, it's a peninsula, nobody drives through, right? But then we had our own George Floyd in town, a Congolese Christian. Patrick Lyoya was shot and killed by a Christian police officer, and just thought, wow, if we're going to do this work, we need to do it in our own backyard. We've been doing trainings all over North America, and we just thought it's time to sort of pay attention to our own backyard and see who's already doing good work in the area and get to know them a little bit better. And so we just tried to bring together as diverse a set as we could. We didn't go after big names and big personalities and big brands. We went after people that were in the trenches, from different racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, and theological and political spectrum. And we found that in some sense, the greater the diversity, not only the greater the challenge, but also the greater the reward. And so we just we reached out to people that we trusted, to then say, who should we have in this? We tried not to bring a bunch of people we already knew. We tried to bring mostly new people into the project. And yeah, we just reached out and cast a vision of what would happen if we were able to do this. What might this mean for Grand Rapids? What might this mean for your parish or your congregation? And what might it mean for the world if we could model something that the world itself can't imagine? And we had an extraordinary acceptance rate to invitations. We put it together in a very short amount of time. Once we shifted we spent a lot of time thinking about doing it in Chicago, but then when the shooting happened, we switched to Grand Rapids and switched gears pretty fast. And we put the team together in about a month and a half, which, given the commitment that we were asking of people, was extraordinary, because we were asking for a lot of time over the course of a year. And these are very busy, very dedicated people. But they caught the vision and made a commitment, and they all kept it in really amazing ways.
That's fantastic. And how did the process, both of you talk about the process of preparing each, when Nicholas, when you came in to film it, how was the preparation for each session, because you were breaking this up, right, in different times?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because all the preparation, you sort of have to come in with a plan, but if you find that you've executed the plan that you came in with, you've made a bad documentary. So, every time sort of about, 24 hours into shooting, we would realize, oh, this is not at all what we expected, and make some kind of big pivot. And I think that's part of what is, like that quiet lessons, those lessons from that, that live behind the scenes, right? Of how do you listen really carefully? How do you listen really carefully and hear, where is this conversation going? What's being articulated here? And how do we find that and live into that moment? And, I mean, we have so many beautiful voices in this film, but personally, as an Episcopalian, I'm particularly grateful for Molly's voice. But I think that listening, that learning to listen and to say, okay, what is this group? What exists between the people in this group leading us to, became such a kind of sort of odd North Star that might take you on a circuitous route, but surely will take you to something true.
Yeah, likewise. We planned 3 week-long gatherings and spent a lot of energy programming it out, and but threw it out within the first 6 hours of the first gathering, and that happened every time. Sam Wells, Episcopalian or Anglican priest, wrote a book called Theology or Improvisation. Sort of that improvisation is the heart of theology, and that whatever the world offers you, you kind of you improvisationally respond, and move into embracing what is. And so that was the dance that we were doing all the way through. Is what is in front of us, what is faithfully being present to all of the tensions, all the beauty, all of the ugliness require of us, and just kind of followed the Spirit all the way through.
Well, speaking of all the voices, if Michael, if you might want to introduce Molly and give a little intro to her.
Yeah, I didn't know Molly before this. We had friends in common, and when I was talking to a friend saying, I need an Episcopalian that is a person of peace, but also can mix it up. And she said, I know the exact person for you. And Molly was doing really interesting work on the north end of Grand Rapids, a part of a clergy group. And Molly and I met, and Molly, I'll let you say more, but you were just coming off a retreat, and you were sort of spiritually, I don't know how to describe it, but you were full, and you were ready, and you heard the call, and you said, this is what I'm made for. And but Molly also had, because of her history, she's got some sensitivities to the other things going on. She's got a Calvinist background, which is a lot of people in Grand Rapids. And so I knew she would understand the other players, and really did. And Molly just brought her whole self every time, and it was really amazing. So I'm glad to call Molly a very dear friend now.
Why don't we introduce Molly first with showing a bit of the film with you in it, and then we'll come back. So, Andy, if you could set that up.
The Bible says the kingdom of heaven is like a net that caught all kinds of fish. We got to be able to catch all kinds of fish. Now, whether they embrace it, what they do with it, that's up to them. But my job is to go catch fish for the kingdom.
Maybe the beauty is not just that we see each other, but that we also enjoy each other.
Whether you want to be Christian or not doesn't change the fact that being loved is the solve for my fears. And what authentic love does is it settles that, so I can be, you can be all that you are, and know that you are still embraced.
I just think about the future. I don't know. What does the world look like if we all walk away from each other? What does it look like for resources? I mean, to me, it looks like scarcity and isolation. And
I think a lot of people would say the world out there is getting worse. We are literally being taught to hate each other. That if there's something that we can point to say, yeah, but there's humanity, yeah, there's worth, yeah, there's goodness that's bigger than what I've been taught or what I've been told to despise about you. You have to want that. You have to want the potential of what's possible.
Let's just continue and Molly kind of talk about your experience in the film and
So first of all, Nicholas makes us all look really good in the movie. So and it's really hopeful. So I wanna say a plug for the film. When people ask me, is it good? I immediately say, yes, it's not just good, it's excellent. So anyhow, I am Molly Bosher, and I'm an Episcopal priest up on the north side of Grand Rapids here, and I have served churches in Florida and in Virginia, and have lived kind of up and down the East Coast. And when someone called me and asked me, is this something you might be willing to do? I answered with my heart, not with my head. And you know how, like, when you answer with your heart, like what happens, all of a sudden you find yourself in a space that is really beautiful, but also maybe demands a little bit more of you than what you thought was going to be demanded at the beginning. I mean, I don't know. Does anybody else have that experience in life? So I would say that was, it was definitely, I kind of used the word, I know, I apologize, excruciating to be part of this, and also absolutely and wonderfully expansive, especially looking back on it. But it's excruciating because these differences that we have as Christians are so close to our hearts. And, you know, those are the pieces that of life that you care most about. I mean, maybe we can have a difference of like even a political issue. But within our Christianity, within the things that we both live with our bodies and we live in our hearts and we live in community, when we have those differences, it is really, really hard. And Michael said this, I mean, I was kind of raised in more Calvinist tradition, some of the more evangelical tradition. And I've made a move to the Episcopal Church on purpose. So Michael alluded to the fact that sometimes maybe this was especially hard for me because I've done some of that work, and it was hard when I did that work, and it was hard in these contexts. And I would also say these things. I would say our presiding bishop in our Way of Love, Michael Curry, asks us to cross boundaries. And this is a big way that I feel like I've done that work of crossing boundaries, you know, not just with people who are, I don't know, not just with people who are needy, but with people who are more conservative than I am. And I think that's a really important reminder for me And I would say that it's expanded my world in some really wonderful and funny, and I like that word you use, Nicholas, kooky ways. And I think that's holy work. I mean, that's holy and really good work. The other thing that I would say about this film is this reminded me of something that I didn't think was possible again, which is that movement that the Colossian Forum is so good with rupture and repair. Like rupture being that there is a wound, there is a problem, there is a hole there, and a lot of times in our lives that happens. Like we have ruptures with people. I mean, and people who we're really close with, we can manage those. But sometimes with our friends or our family that we're not quite as intimate with, we have no idea what to do with those things. And I feel like this project and Michael has given me hope that that is possible, not just in this group of these pastors, but also in my church, in my family, in my friends, and in the world.
Happy to get it wrong.
It's really interesting. I feel like you know, I didn't think it was gonna, I wasn't sure in the middle of it that it was gonna come off, you know, that the whole project was gonna, I thought the whole thing might collapse. And, you know, Michael and I made a deal at the beginning that whatever we tried to do had to be something that could fail, you know, because otherwise we would sort of sniff out at the beginning as an audience that like, this is a setup. And I remember in the middle of the filming being like, oh, that was a really bad deal to make. Maybe we could have made a deal for something that we knew was going to succeed. But yeah, I feel like that's part of what the beauty is, right? That you experience the pain and like the kind of suspense of what's going to work here? Because we all think we know the answers and we don't. And I think Michael puts it so beautifully at one point in the film saying, you be who you are, I'll be who I am, and we'll get through this together. And what I realize is we really only ever believe two of those things, you know, either you change, I change, or we're going our separate ways. And you know, to believe all three of those things feels impossible. It feels like one of those has to be wrong. Yes. And, you know, the exercise of the whole movie is just sort of glued to this screen saying, is there something after a train wreck? Is there something after rupture, you know? And that reminder, sorry, just the last thing, that reminder that like, we sometimes end stories too early, right? Like the story doesn't end when Germany invades Poland, right? And you know, in Christian terms, the story doesn't end with the crucifixion. And I think that is sometimes really hard to believe when you're in that part of the story.
I mean, we got it wrong a lot. I got it wrong a lot. And people continue to sort of do the work all the way through the rupture to the repair and to, I think the possibility of being reconciled, the beauty of that, and the possibility of it kept people going through the difficulty. And Molly, I know that there were times where you were really struggling to kind of hang in with the group. You were frustrated and
very much.
Yeah, but you continue to say that this call is worth it. And Nicholas, you've bandied about the phrase, you know, love is hard, hope is real. You can't have one half of that equation without the other. And we experienced both. And I think this is I think a common experience for clergy, right? But the ability to capture this on film and share it is what I think is really exceptional about this moment in time. The necessity of being able to see this, to have this vicarious experience, not just of rupture, which is what the 24-hour news cycle is, but to see the repair and to see the beauty. I'm really proud of that.
I just want to, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to sort of do a quick shout out to Grace Church Brooklyn, who I think is on the Zoom, because that's where my husband and I go. And my husband grew up Cuban and Catholic in Florida and has zero time for anything that smacks of organized religion. And yet the environment at Grace is just so much about the questions that are really important and the questions that we have to ask ourselves. And I think it's that issue that we have right now in the sort of what seems like this yawning gap between, Christians or people of faith and people who are religiously unaffiliated, that somehow we're not actually all interested in the same questions. And it turns out we are. And I think that's what the movie has taught me, is that every time someone watches it, they immediately bring it to their personal experience. They're immediately like, I get it. This is what's happening with me and, the Jewish community in St. Louis, me around Israel, Palestine, and Nashville. This is what's happening with me, as I, confront MAGA hats in Penn Station. It's like, well, we know this is true, and being able to see people struggle with it honestly and sincerely, I think is really, really beautiful to watch.
It is, and I think seeing you going through it as organizations, and it also reflects, it's a great way to experience it, everybody on the personal side and individual. And I think that's why we're so proud that we're able to do it, to put the movie out in theaters, because it's a different experience, I think, when you go see it in a group with other people and feel the emotion coming through, and then it makes you want to talk about it and discuss it. And we're really proud to do that. And I kind of want to acknowledge, we're starting to get partners on the film, theatrical partners, meaning movie exhibitors and theaters. And it's important that, the theater owners and the people that program these independent theaters and the big chains understand that independent films and films about faith have to be included in the overall mix. We all love blockbusters and big studio films, and that's great. But if we want these type of films like Nicholas and Michael's film, the audience you have to show up, and in a way, you have to go vote for these films. We have to show people that when you go out to a theater and buy a ticket for Leap of Faith, it's also a sign that you want more films like this to come out, and the ability to be able to see them, and that there's a viable audience for films like this about faith, and also just to have a dialogue. So I just wanted to mention a few around the country. There's Celebration Cinemas, which are hosting us in Grand Rapids. Marcus Cinemas, a great family company out of Milwaukee, and big circuits like Regal and AMC, and also a wonderful group in Phoenix called Harkins. These are theater owners that want to help get films out like this in a theatrical way, and then also continue to help support dialogue after the film. And they're offering us ways to have Q&As, and Nicholas and Michael and Ma, everybody is going around and really talking about the film as it plays out. And just to give you an idea, we're starting out next week in October 4th in Grand Rapids, obviously hometown HQ, and then St. Louis, Nashville, Phoenix, and Washington, D.C. And then it rolls out. It's like we have to demonstrate in the first weekend, that there's viability for the film, and then it starts to build. And the success of the film depends on these initial reactions and numbers and support in these cities. So we want to partner with faith organizations, and it's important to sort of help bring awareness to the subject of the film. We're launching a pastor program, which is an invitation to participate in the film's opening in different cities, and including local pastors as part of Q&As, giving tickets with them to the congregation, and all that information will be on leapoffaithmovie.com. There's opportunities to buy out a theater and have a private screening for your congregation, or small groups, any size, and sort of encourage people to go together and experience the film and talk about it afterwards. And all that information in our programs will be up on the website.
it's interesting, I have to say, and Molly knew this from the beginning when she first screened the film. She was just like, this is an Episcopalian film. And I think that doesn't, I don't think that's an exclusive comment. I think it's a film for many, many people. But I do think I've been so grateful that, you know, All Saints in Phoenix or Bishop Johnson in Missouri and you know, our churches in both the Diocese of Long Island and Manhattan and New York, you know, there's such a warm reaction, because I think so often we get flattened, right? That people of, that there's a notion that you know, the way things are read in the news, you would think that everyone is either a white Christian nationalist or a spiritual, religiously unaffiliated person. And it turns out there's a lot more to it than that, and a lot more to the struggle to figure out how do we live our lives together than choosing one of those two paths. And for me, I think the support from Episcopalian parishes matters, not just in those cities that Bob mentioned, but let us know, say you want this film to come to your city, and we will try to make that happen. I think it's so important to be able to say, you know, there's a Nigerian poet, Ben Okri, who said, beware of the stories you read, for quietly at night, they are altering your soul, you know. And I think that there's some truth to that we have to choose carefully the stories that we look at, because they alter the way we make decisions and who we are. And I feel so changed by the stories that Molly and Michael and all of the pastors shared with me. And I feel like it's an opportunity for us to make a statement about what we stand for and who we are.
You know,
Yeah.
after the very first showing that I saw in the theater, there was one person who said, and I'll never forget it, he said, I want to have these conversations with people I disagree with. And that is, I mean, in some ways, we could argue that's the work of the Spirit, right? I think if you go see this film, that will happen for you too. I think that will kind of put that hunger in our souls. And, you know, we as Episcopalians often talk about how we like questions more than we like answers. I think our time is here. You know, there are a lot of questions that we need to ask. And, you know, it is hard to find the answers in this time. And I'm not sure that any of us have those answers, but I think I love going back again to the Colossian Forum, that all things hold together in Christ. And that's why we can push. That's why we can continue to ask these deeper questions, and why we can say, hey, look, we want to continue to participate in places and in spaces where we cross these boundaries, where we do these wild things. And I'm with Nicholas. Everyone should see this movie. And if you are in a town that is not showing it, you know, one of the things you could do is call your theater. Ask them to show it. And if a couple of people call it, they probably will. You know, so continue to, this is one of the ways where we can show our numbers and our strength as a denomination. And I think it's a very Episcopal film.
Absolutely. Wait, like you can write us on the website and call your local theaters or ask us or give us your city, and we'll make it happen. It's also, I just wanted to mention, it's also going to premiere at the Heartland Film Festival in Indianapolis, which is a wonderful, wonderful group that has supported, you know, beautiful films in the past. And we're really happy that it's part of that. And also just, you know, back to Michael a bit to really talk about Colossian Forum and the resources and the support that you've put behind this. We really appreciate it as we get to the release part. It's always a different phase, making the movie, and now it's a whole nother ton of work to get the movie out to people. So we really appreciate you going on the whole journey.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a journey. I mean, this is the first, I think, for any of us involved with not only the Colossian Forum, but the pastors in the film process at all. Getting to the post film is actually much easier, which is now you need something to do. Well, that's what we do, right? And so producing resources, we know that when people watch this, they're going to want to take a next step. And And so that's what we want to resource and equip. In fact, people saw an earlier version of the teaser for it, and people said the response to this movie is people are going to want more. And so we tried to design some resources that drew off the same sort of theology of reconciliation that's behind a lot of our work that we got from Duke Center for Reconciliation and the work of peacemakers around the world. And it's just this 4-stage movement of, you begin, anytime you're working across difference, you begin with the eschatological hope we have that in the end all will be well, all manner of things will be well. And that our hope is in all things holding together in Christ. And we say this is where we're going, but then the second step is just an honest lament for where we're not, and an honest assessment. And we did that as a group regularly. We are not where we want to be. We are not reconciled. We have deep divisions and suspicions about each other. But through that lament process and an attunement to each other and to the Spirit, the third stage of just listening for the image of God in the other, listening for the Spirit, that moves us to see the Spirit's movement already at work in each other, and new possibilities begin to emerge. And as those new possibilities emerge, you move into action. So that sort of fourfold: hope, lament, listening, and acting. We've created resources for, you can do it in your family, you can do it in your neighborhood, you can do it in your church. It goes along with the film. It kind of gives you a behind the scenes look. And it's just a way for people who are moved by this to do their own work. If you're moved by this and say, I need somewhere to start, these resources will be available. If you want to know a little bit more about the pastors, they've all been so generous with their time. We did podcasts with all of them. You can find them. You can find the podcasts at Practicing Hope, the Practicing Hope podcast. You can find it on our website, which I posted. And it's not just us. There are a whole network of peacemakers that will be showcased on the Leap of Faith Film website. So find your people and do the work.
Yeah, going back to what Molly was saying, I think the idea of the questions, I love how the film develops that. It's not going to answer everything. It's going to make you talk about it and probably generate more questions, but that's really the beauty of it and how it's come together. And I just want to also say that just the technical side of the film and the way it's turned out with the sound, the music, the cinematography, it's really wonderful. And Nicholas, just a fantastic creative job on making a way that just grips you when you sing it. And people are gonna come out of it and really talk. And it's because of it takes everything. It takes the group and what's happened, but it also takes the artistic process to make it work and to have an effect on the audience.
Thank you, Bob. That's very kind. I do think what works in a medium is you have to understand the medium you're working in, right? Film is so beautiful at conveying an emotional experience, right? There's nothing quite like it. It simultaneously is totalizing and elliptical, right? And I think there's something really beautiful about this experience as 90 minutes in your day to be transported and sort of confused and turned all upside down, but also supported and aware of the fact that there is this beauty that exists outside and around all of us. And that's what I try to convey as a filmmaker. And I feel like the extraordinary, images, both of the pastors, but of Grand Rapids and the music, Brendan Eder just did such a gorgeous job with the score, creating something that makes you feel like you're on the ride with these folks over the course of a year in sort of the limited time that we have. So I hope it does speak to you. And I really, really, I'm really thrilled and grateful.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's great I think the beauty of a theatrical experience is to actually take the time to focus on it. And you're not doing stuff at the same time. You have to give yourself up to it.
And it forces you to, to do the work, right? To be next to someone that you might not know, right? It's very easy to watch things safely in your in your home by yourself or next to your loved ones. But when you're in a theater, just like when you're in church, you're forced to be next to people that you may not know. And then you find that you're having the same emotional experience as they, and that makes you curious about, well, if we're having the same emotional reaction, that must mean that there's something that we share in common, even if there's so much that divides us. And that theatrical experience just makes this so moving to me. It's why why Michael has been so on board with finding all of these partners who come at this work in so many different ways, so that if you do feel opened up emotionally by this film, there's so many avenues to pursue that work. It's not just, you know, oh, well, you did this, now do that. It's no, if you're open, find some way of making it into, to quote Michael, a rule of life for yourself, right? How does this become a rule of life that gives you, you know, that helps? I don't know, Michael, maybe I misquoted you or misunderstood you. My theology is as good as my filmmaking, which is maybe not that good either, but.
Both quite astute, to say the least, Nicholas. The rule of faith, I mean, that is really in some ways what we're after, is we do need a way of being across difference, and that needs to be cultivated as a spiritual practice across time. And when we craft a shared rule of faith about how we're going to go about this, it allows us to continue to aspire and learn together.
I am also reminded how the people that we know who are different from us, they enrich our life so much. You know, you can be surrounded just by people who are just like you. But as you continue to kind of expand your circle into places that maybe you would not normally go, the richness is just amazing. And I think that's one of the pieces that comes out in this film as well.
Absolutely. Any further thoughts, Michael and Molly, just before we sign off here on anything, the whole experience or what's happening next?
Well, so obviously the film rollout, we're really excited. We've got these resources that come alongside for folks that have seen the film and want to have a conversation about it. We are also in a political season, as some of you might have noticed, and we have a resource for small groups engaging conversations around politics called One Anothering. It's really received extraordinarily positive feedback. That's, you know, eight sessions. If you want to. The goal is to kind of move people from scarcity to abundance, from disdain to love, and just across each week a sort of a mode shift from the contentions of the world to something more rich and more beautiful. And a lot of the resources that are in that guide were things that we used in the film as well, and even developed for it. So I'll put a link to that as well in the chat, and just invite people to check it out.
And Molly, anything further to add?
Nothing that I can think of, but what I will say, well, maybe one thing. The thing that I will say is we tell our histories looking back. And just want to remind everyone who is in the middle of this contentious election season and maybe in the middle of this process of rupture and repair, that as both Nicholas and Michael said earlier, that is not the end of the story.
Yeah.
No, thank you. We're all really blessed that this came together, and to see the process and to see the progress that Jeannie and I have seen over the films coming together. And now we're in the next part of it. So if anybody would like any more information, everything's on the site, and we really could use your help in helping get this out to as many cities as we can. I just want to thank everybody for participating on this, and Nicholas, give you kind of the last word about the film.
Oh gosh, last word about the film. It's an experience, right? It's an experience to go, and it's an experience that I needed over 4 years. And it's an experience I hope can offer something to others over 90 minutes. But it's an experience that I feel like makes the world feel a little bit easier, even though it doesn't shy away from just how hard the world is. And to me, that's what I think about all the time. How do we create sturdy hope? Hope that you can build on, not hope that sort of feels naive or misplaced. And I think we have an opportunity to tell people that different stories are possible and that those stories are beautiful and fun and joyful and painful and worth it. So please come see the film. Be in touch if you want us to bring the film to you. We're excited. I know Caitlin offered to play the trailer again at the end here, and perhaps we can go out with that and see if that'll take us home.
That'll be great. And thanks everyone. Thanks for making the film and thanks for doing this today. And
dropping the link one last time in the chat and saying, if you can do us the kindness of taking 2 minutes out of your day at the end of this call to watch the trailer, it would mean the world to us. I hope that it speaks to you as deeply as it does to us. And I hope it gives you an encouragement and an enthusiastic hug to come and visit with us in the theaters.
that'd be great. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.
O God, you have made us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love, and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth. That in your good time all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Good choice.
Thank you.